everything on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I gotta go. I'll order a pizza later, okay? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Harness Players Podcast. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. There is nothing behind me. But there is someone joining me. We know him as a man that we all love and cherish, and from time to time also see on the hit show, the Harness Players Podcast. I'm proud to welcome not only my colleague, but my friend to the stage, Michael Prebosi.
I feel like I'm halfway. I should move
Yeah,
over.
we'll get you center stage.
Get me in here.
Yeah, there you go. You fit so snugly into the half of the
It's
screen.
way
Have you lost
higher
weight?
too. I gotta move up. I gotta get straightened out here.
Yeah, no, posture is everything. I've learned that from my physical therapist, who took me from being like this, being more like this.
Okay.
And only in the matter of 6 weeks. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with not being like totally straight. But that's a whole different conversation. We have so much to talk about, and we could talk about so much more than just harness racing. But Mike, as you and I both know, the people come for two things here. One, to see just how attractive harness analysts can look. And two, to get some insight on harness racing across North America. Of course, we have Fraser Downs to talk about on this week's show, as we tend to do. But we're also happy to welcome back into the rotation Yonkers Raceway, because, Mike, I mean, you felt it too. When you open the door in the mornings now, the air just feels a little fresher. It feels a lot nicer. The sun is shining brighter, and that's because it's Borgata time, baby.
It is. And one thing we didn't mention last week, because we recorded the show prior to the accident, the unfortunate incident at the Meadows last week on Wednesday with Hunter Myers, and you know, he fell victim to an accident and ended up losing his life. And we definitely, our heart goes out to his family. He was a rising star in harness racing, and very familiar with him, with my affinity for the Meadows. Didn't know him personally, but it's just these things hit home, and there's something to be said for all these people that compete every day for our enjoyment, and then things like this happen, and it's just brings a lot of perspective. So we would be remiss to not mention that, and some of the things that are going on, a lot of the fundraisers, the GoFundMe's, check it out there on Twitter. It's all over the place, and there's different T-shirts you can buy. Certainly, we'll put a lot of that in the newsletter this week. So definitely wanted to mention that to start the show.
And we're recording this on Wednesday, the first day the Meadows has raced since that incident occurred. And before the card, you can find pictures of it too on social media. All the drivers, all the trainers, all the horsemen, they did a lap around the track in honor of Hunter. I was familiar with him too, not personally, but you know, I've bet my fair share at the Meadows, and I always knew that when I had 4-1, 5-1 shot, I wanted to put money on that Hunter was driving. They were turning for home. If he had room to go, I knew I always had a chance. Or similarly, if I bet a horse and I saw him perched on a helmet, I always kind of gulped. I was like, oh no, because he had a great set of hands, and it's rare that this stuff happens in this sport, and it's just, I think, if anything, been really nice to see everyone coming together to support one another, and of course the family of Hunter Myers too, as they try to deal and grieve and move forward from that incident. But Mike, of course, sad things come. We try to push forward as well. The racing continues, and these people, they go out and they make their livings. They're out there grinding, trying to just get from week to week to get their horses better and better. And we're happy to be able to participate in the way that we do. We're spectators. We get to just sit back and yell about how they should be doing better, because obviously we, from our couches and our chairs, know a lot more than what they do from behind the bikes. Let's put some of our brain power then into the Fraser Downs Pick 4 for Friday, March. Oh, is it 28th? God, we're already at the end of March. It's crazy. I feel like we were just at the start of March, at least a month ago. Race 5 kicks off the Pick 4 for this Friday card at Fraser. Only 8 races on tap, 20-cent minimum. But before we roll into that, Mike, you and I were talking before recording this about how bonkers the payout from last week was, especially looking at just the win pays. The highest priced horse, I think, was at least $8. So the pick four massively outperformed the win parlay.
Absolutely. Paid over 500 for $1. And if you watch the pod, you probably cashed in because we highlighted the contenders in all the races. And we certainly thought that second leg would end up with a price. And Campbell won the last 3. It'll Be Fine won the first leg as the favorite. Certainly a lot of those horses were havable if you listen to the pod, and you got paid handsomely, 500 for $1 in that pick four. The pool was solid. It was over $8,000. These Fraser pick fours are worth paying attention to, especially late night, Friday night. Get in. There's money to be made there.
Well, and on top of that, when we were looking back too, what really made that ticket go from paying something like 50, 60 bucks to 500 was beating one odds-on favorite that Dave Hudon was driving in the second leg and doing it with the second choice in the betting that Brandon Campbell was driving.
That horse wasn't 1-9 on paper either. If you looked at that race, I mean, all those horses were struggling going into that race. So the fact that he took so much action and was 1-9 in there, and he was a fade for us. I mean, we talked, Edison and I talked last week. He wasn't on any one of my tickets. So, I mean, it's horses like that you can take advantage of that maybe do not have the chance to win that they are being backed at, that you can turn multis into really high-paying entities there. So we're always on the lookout for bad favorites. This was a bad favorite that led to a big payout.
Now, a question, Mike, then for you as we shift our attention to the pick four for Friday at Fraser. We start with a condition claiming event. 6 horses going poster in this one, $8,500 the purse. And we have a fairly decisive favorite potentially in the 5, Zilla Katzen, 8-5 on the morning line. We've been watching this horse week to week racing at Fraser, made his way up to the preferred ranks last time out, finished second to It'll Be Fine, but now does not have to deal with essentially the best horse on the grounds at Fraser right now. So are you leaning towards just kind of singling that one and moving forward, or do you think there is some room where maybe Zilla Katzen could get caught off guard?
I do think he's going to be the lowest bet favorite in this entire sequence. He has merits, but he did miss last week. He stepped up and was defeated there. Now It'll Be Fine is the top horse on the ground, so no disgrace there. However, there's other horses I think that are at his level in here. I liked Drum and Raisins last week. He didn't get his trip. Now he's inside again. Will he push forward off the gates? That's the question. I know he's 2-1 morning line. Probably shouldn't be. You're going to get a bigger price on him in this race. I do think they'll come for the 5 pretty hard in here. I'll use Rum and Raisins one more time, one more chance for him. And then I do think the 6, Whiplash Smile, is going to wake up eventually. Improved effort last time from the 7 post, off a little bit of a drop there. Catch Me Oliver is another sharp animal around there. I do think that this horse is capable of beating this type of field. I want him in here. I do think that if he can beat this favorite in his first leg, you're going to get another big payout for the pick 4.
We've seen Whiplash Smile do his best work when he's been able to blast off the wings of the gate. And certainly when you have an outside draw, you can build that momentum through the turn. It kind of helps you better than having the inside post. But my concern, I'm curious if you have the same with him, Mike, is seeing that Alan Malloy is not in the bike this week. Rod Terrace, who trains Whiplash Smile, is driving him. And last time you look on the lines, Rod decided to take him back. So does that kind of worry you that maybe because the trainer's in the bike, we may expect a more conservative steer? Or do you actually think that, for one, it could provide value and then maybe Rod might be more aggressive in this?
I think no. He's driven him before. He's certainly a capable driver. I mean, he's 26% as a driver. Me looking at this horse is more the fact that he woke up last time. I'm more interested in that last line from off the pace, from a tough post. I do think that if there's another step forward, I'm not sure it matters who's driving. And I'm not sure that he's necessarily trip dependent if he's on his best game. You know the favorite's going to blast. That's that horse's game. Could follow him out of there, maybe end up in the 2-hole. Maybe he is quick enough to go early. I don't know. I'm not really too concerned with the trip here. I'm more concerned with, is he in form if he's getting back to his best? If he does, I think he has a good chance.
I can't argue that. I think the one reason why I'm hesitant to take him is, for one, we know Zilla is going to be a pretty short price and has a pretty decent chance to win. So we do have to be mindful of how much we're spreading if we're going to use him inside of this sequence. I certainly do. And the only horse I add on inside of this race is just because I think the price is going to be right. Not Whiplash Smile. I'm kind of curious how One Tough Beach Boy is going to do inside of this spot. I thought that was an okay race against It'll Be Fine back on last week, as a matter of fact, finishing third off the pocket trip. That was his first start since being off from December. I mean, you look down the page, this is a class that he seems to fit somewhat snugly. And the post seems right, too, for him to maybe just kind of work forward and see what can happen. Because in my mind, Zilla has to win this race. And if he doesn't win this race, then it's probably going to go some way that we can't predict. And maybe One Tough Beach Boy is going to land on the better end of a more chaotic type of setup. But he's the only one I add. He's at least going to be a bit of a price to make spreading feel a bit more justifiable. Because, again, 8 to 5 on the morning line, Zilla has got to be, what, 2 to 5, 1 to 5 in this race?
You probably will. I mean, sub even money for sure. My problem with One Tough Beach Boys, he just doesn't win all that much. The driver certainly doesn't win all that much. He had a perfect trip last time and still ended up being third. Can he win? I guess, but he's going to be much lower on the board now. He certainly was 28 to 1 versus these last week. He's probably going to be, I would say he's going to be lower than the morning line here for sure. It's the first leg of the pick 4. So the board might tell a little bit of a story. He's just not for me.
Huh. Well, we'll see what happens then into the second leg. I go short in here as well. This is a $12,000 claiming event, $7,500 purse. This time 7 horses going postward. 2 to 1 morning line favorites, the 4 Mock Steady, but he got the lead last time, and I have an incredibly hard time wanting to take him in the potential of going pillar to post when he just totally faded in that last quarter of a mile. How about you?
Yeah, I don't want him at all. I'm not using him. I don't like horses off those sorts of things. Maybe there's a bounce back here, but again, with a short price, I'd rather go elsewhere. I'm going to try some prices. I like Catching Oliver again. I do think that he's racing better than it seems. And, you know, that upset on March the 7th, watch that trip. I mean, he had no business winning that race. And I liked him last week, and he delivered again. Now, he took money with Campbell in the bike. He's not going to beat that from this post, but I do think he's capable against these horses. And he's just one of those under-the-radar types that I think is racing better than it seems. So I like him. I'll use Credit as Magic. I do think that one has had some tough trips recently and maybe could end up in a pocket here. And that horse can win off of that trip. And then Buddyville is obvious. He needs, obviously, things to go his way. He needs a pace. But he gets bet a lot. I mean, but he's right there every week. He won 9 times last year. He's drawn inside the would-be favorite now. Scott Knight is definitely familiar with him. I'll use him. So 2, 3, and 7 for me.
I don't get why Buddyville lags so much off of the gate, especially looking to his most recent line. He finished runner-up to Catch Me Oliver after that one won again from that 14 to 1 upset he scored prior. I'm not, and you're kind of like this too. I think most people are like this. If you're going to single any type of horse, you don't really want to single a closer. But
yeah,
I feel like Buddyville could potentially be an okay one because, like you said, he tends to take a lot of money all the time. He's the second choice on the morning line here. I think there's a chance that he's going to be the favorite. And I don't really like any of the speed inside of this race. Mock Steady has a lot to kind of prove after coming that 30 and change final quarter when he tried cutting the fractions. Credit is Magic. I mean, he's a 57, 56 type pacer, even if he can get to the lead. And so if the race goes slow enough, I feel like Buddyville has to be closer than he has been of late. And he just has more power than these other ones coming home. I mean, Catch Me Oliver's gone some pretty big miles of late. The draw, though, I don't think he's going to be in a real nice striking spot when they spin for home. Buddyville, at the very least, if he can get second over, I think the horses that are going to be up front are slow enough in that last part of the race that Buddyville can easily compensate for that and get there first. It's a weird race. I can't really find anything I'm super enthusiastic about, and so especially since we start potentially with a strong favorite, I'm going into another favorite here. Why would I want to try and spread more? Maybe there's other places to spread, like in the next race, the third leg of the pick 4 at Fraser Downs for Friday. Non-winners a 4 conditioned event. $7,000 purse, 8 horses going postward. The trick, though, Mike, as I remember who is in this race, is do you really want to spread against Tahuya Devil?
I don't, because that's the same bunch of horses that this horse has been beating at 1-9 every week. Now, there's really not much else that you can latch onto in here. I don't like Key Dragon. Campbell gets off. Different pilot now, and it's probably going to take a lot of the money that Tahuya Devil does not take. So I really don't want that one. And some of the others, like I like Willie Rocket as a horse, but I do think that this horse probably needs a race, needs a wake up. So there's really nothing in here intrigues me beyond the favorite. So I'll just single Tahuya Devil and I will move on.
I understand singling Tahuya Devil too. Back-to-back wins here at Fraser Downs. Seems to have done so fairly handily. It's going to be a fairly odds-on choice again, so why would you want to spend more than you may have to? I'm just adding one other horse again, kind of like how I did in the first leg, just to give myself a chance at a potential price in case things somehow fly south. And on top of that, I find some appeals in the 5 I Know Better, who's right next door to Tahuya Devil. Because you look all the way back to 2023, this horse had an awful trip in a British Columbia stake and then ended up finishing up the track as a result. Raced against a lot weaker through his 3-year-old season, but it seemed like he was just easily developing through those soft spots to potentially poise himself for a stakes try at the end before he scratched sick. So I'm hoping that maybe he's a bit better than a lot of his lines have shown, and especially off of that 2-minute win that he scored, he's probably not going to get a lot of play because you're going to see a bunch of people go 2 minutes. This horse can't compete against these at all. He's too slow. But I feel like he might have a bit more to offer. Kelly Horde, of course, could probably work a nice trip with this guy, and since Tahuya Devil's going to be like 1-5, maybe you get like 8-1, 9-1 if you're lucky.
Lightly raced. I mean, 11 starts, 10 times in the money, certainly always right there, but probably has to improve here to beat the favorites. I don't like horses that necessarily have to drop 5 seconds to get into the race. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't know how much that race prepped this horse for the second start out. But sometimes, all a horse needs is just a little go around the track, and then they're like new. And plus, it's really tough to take anyone else inside of that race, just knowing how good Tahuya Devil's been. At the very least, he's a little bit of an outsider with a bit of intrigue, and so the potential some kind of exists. Last leg is the 4th leg of the pick 4. Big surprise. 8th race, Filly and Mare, $5,000 claimer. That should not be as much of a tongue twister as it was. 8 horses going postward. 8 starts in the second tier. Mike, it seems like the inside horses hold the best hand.
Yeah, I'm just too deep. If you watch the trip LD's Contessa got last time, really had absolutely no chance. Got away well. Got stuck in a jackpot, really had nowhere to go when Cahalia Storm dominated. And that was a really nice race from that one on March the 20th. There was no catching that one there. Now you get an inside post. I do think a lot of money will flow through the 2. I think it's the 2 and the 4. That's all I need in here to finish up. I'm sure the 3 will take money. The 1 will take money, but just give me 2, 4 to be alive to them. Hopefully for a couple bucks here, and hopefully we get paid.
He got caught in a jackpot?
Yeah.
That sounds like a Rayism where even I'm going, well, what does that mean?
Oh, come on.
I've heard of a blind switch, and every time it comes up, Ed DeRosa goes to me, can you please explain to me what a blind switch is? I've never heard of a jackpot being a spot. But I'm not contesting Cahalia Storm. I definitely used that one too. You and I were talking beforehand that it's weird looking at a horse that folded off of such an easy lead to start prior to then go and park the first half and crush in the race after. Maybe a sign that now he's finally putting the pieces together. The thing I just don't like is he's really obvious, but it does seem like this last leg is going to go the way of a fairly short price. I'm not opposed to Tina La Vida right next door either. This one tends to come from off the speed, and so that's potentially a liability. But I also don't mind Play Misty for me to the inside just because of the new connections. First off, the claim for trainer Rebecca Canick, and as you and I have seen fairly often so far, not just this meet, but even the meet prior, Mike, the Canick barn can really find what was going on with horses, get them ready for first start inside of their stable, and they really do find improvements. So Play Misty for me could probably follow suit there. What's your ticket For the Fraser pick 4, Mike.
356 with 237 with 6 with 24. I might have to add the 1 in that last leg there. Just off that claim, I do think that has merit. So she could be live in there.
And just by going off of the 10,000 numbers you said, that's what, $800? How much is your
No,
ticket?
well, it's 18 for a buck. If you add the 1 in the last, it's 27.
Okay, I mean, this is probably the most expensive ticket I've given all meet at Fraser Downs. I'm 2.5 with 3 with 5.6 with 1.23. That's $12 for a buck. And worst case scenario, if it all chalks out, you may get double your money. Not ideal to get 4 in a row to only get
Probably
an
get
even
more than
money
that.
return, but yeah, I mean, I've been surprised sometimes when it's been like fairly chalky. It still pays like 50, 60 bucks, which you do the math on that. It's not too bad, but it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick one horse in a row, let alone 4 in a row.
Friday nights, get in on that 10 Eastern. So perfect spot in the schedule. Get in that late pick 4 and play every race. Really, I mean the whole card actually is really, there's some big fields on Friday night at Fraser. So get in.
Fraser is perfect. All the tracks have gone to bed. You've put your kid to bed. You've put your wife to bed. You don't go to bed because nighttime is the only time available to you for any amount of respite and thought and self-reflection. Maybe that says maybe that's not good for you then for Monday night, because Yonkers starts way earlier. But you're gonna want to set everything aside. Anything that's important in your life, it is gone. Girlfriends gone. Wives gone. Dinner friends gone. We are looking at Borgata. It's a long series, Mike. What makes this series so different from anything else inside of harness racing?
Well, this is what most of your older pacer, that's the top older pacers point for. There's a ton of money on the line. They're going for 50,000 every week. There's 5 legs. So you have the big pots to chase, and then the finals are massive payouts. So there's a lot of chance to make a lot of money in here if you have a top level older pacer. You got the half-mile track. There's some horses that do excel over it. Lots of interest this year, and some horses may contest all 5 legs. Usually not, though. Usually some do 3, 4, but plenty of chances for these horses to earn. And a lot of them are coming back, off some winter breaks. This is one of the best. It's like the kickoff to the Grand Circuit every year. So a lot of fun for us. We've covered the last few years in a row, and very enjoyable for me because you get very good racing. You have a chance to make some money in some of these payouts. The Yonkers handle has been going up. So dollar pick 5 for these 5 races here. This is going to be excellent. I do think that I'm very interested to see how this series progresses.
It's certainly refreshing just inside of the typical elimination final format. We see these horses for 6 weeks, including the final and the consolations. And so there's a lot of room for you to look at bad trips, to look at horses improving, to look at so many other factors, because they're all just going to be coming back. And on top of that, they all have their eye on that big prize. And it's the first graded harness stake ever.
Wow.
Not just of 2025, but of ever. I believe it's a grade 1, if I remember right.
It should be.
But we're going to go through each of the 5 divisions. I believe in total, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, 38 horses dropped in the box for the opening leg of the series. So a lot of full fields, which sometimes we haven't gotten in the Borgata. This has to be one of the larger dumps, to use an unflattering word for a really good race. First division of the first leg for Borgata is race number 5 on Monday night, that being March 31st. We end March with the first stakes event of 2025. 8 horses going postward in this division. A lot of familiar names, Mike, including a Borgata winner in Hullabaloo, who's now 7 years old. And this is kind of to a point you were making when talking about this race. A lot of horses that kind of just sit inside of the condition sheet are trying their hand at black type racing versus, horses that just kind of stick strictly to the Grand Circuit. We're going to see a lot of horses that race in hours of 5,000, 10,000, 20. You're just week in, week out warriors have an opportunity to compete here. Hullabaloo, of course, he has a lot of back class. He did win in the Borgata 1 year, but he
2
looks
years
like
he won.
Yeah, and it looks like he's trying to bounce back, but he's coming from some fairly weak competition. How do you gauge him inside of a race like this?
Well, I do think that he loves this racetrack. He's won this series final twice, both at big prices. So the way he looks on paper is not necessarily how he's going to race versus these horses. I do think that this is his time of year. He's proven that. I mean, he's made almost $1.5 million here. Now, the outside post, he's going to step up here. He's been racing numbers of 97, numbers of 10,000, but 2 straight wins at short prices. He's speedy. He's classy. Do I think he can win this race? Probably not, but it's a long series. So I'm sure the goal is get the points, get in the final, because that's what happens with him. He gets, racks up points, ends up in the final. 1 year he won it at 50-1. So, just get in the gate, get behind there. Do I think he wins here? No, I don't. Of course, Charlie May's in the race. So how am I ever going to pick against him? But he went 49-1 on March 15th at Pocono. That's the second fastest mile recorded this year so far. So he's ready to roll here. He's newly turned 7-year-old also. He's made $2.2 million. He's drawn perfectly. He's raced well at Yonkers in the past. I think he's primed and ready for this series. I do think that he's a horse that is going to be one to watch here. As long as he draws well, he's ready, and he's going to be one for me. I do think Chase H. Hanover is another one that's going to race pretty well here. He's racing in upper levels, speedy, racing well at Pocono. That horse has made over $1 million too. Corey Stratton Barn, always very, very dangerous. Him, Engblom, Trenton, top trainers in the sport have horses here. So Charlie May and Chase H for me in this first race here, but certainly wide open and a great start to the series.
Yeah, and it's tricky too, because especially Yonkers being a smaller track, we kind of get used to the speed holding the most power, just because those tight turns sometimes makes it harder for other horses to try and gain ground, or even just on the smaller track, it's sometimes easier to kind of ration your speed on the lead. That's an interesting factor, because every horse in this race can leave if they want to. So this is in some ways a driver's race. And since it is so early in the series, a horse like Hella Baloo, he at least has a couple starts under his belt. Maybe Gingras does blast with him, because we know that this horse does his best work when he's sitting close to the speed. Question then there for me is, what price do we expect to get? It's tough to gauge any of the prices inside of this series, because we just have this amalgamation of horses coming from races like now the 10,000 invitationals. So at the very least, Charlie May, he makes sense inside of this spot. Chase H. Hanover, if he can get the lead and Napolitano can properly ration his speed, I think he's actually the one to beat inside of this race. Just because.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you mentioned Engblom as well. We know him and Bartlett have been on a tear at Yonkers for what seems like forever, just over the last few years, and getting the inside draw with Hunting the Last Dollar. If I remember right, he was with Greg McNair when he started his career. He was a New York Sire Stakes horse, and he's always been kind of a classy guy, somewhat in the stakes fringes. Here he is now at 5 years old. Maybe now this is his time to finally dive right on in. He gets a great draw compared to what he's had just in his last few starts. Started at the Meadowlands last out, post 6, just didn't really work out. I'm curious if he's going to have a little more from this spot, but price is probably going to get driven down because of Bartlett and Engblom. I'm kind of in the camp of Chase H. Hanover, though. If he's the favorite, I'd probably go more Charlie May, because we know that Charlie May can excel on the half. He really doesn't need any type of trip. He just gets into the race as he needs to. The second division, there's a horse that really caught my eye inside of this one. And it's not Coach's Corner, though, Mike. We remember from this series, Coach's Corner was a menace, but here he is, second start of the campaign. He also has an outside draw.
He does, but he typically comes from off the pace. I know if you look at some of his lines, he has some speed, but last year at Yonkers, he was coming from off of it quite frequently. So I would imagine that they will, race this horse cold in this spot. It comes off, I say a tightener there on March 22nd, but certainly is very classy. Also made 645 last year. A lot of it in this Borgata series. So I do think that, the post for him doesn't necessarily mean as much. It's not ideal, but I do think that it's not going to be life or death to beat him here. But there's other ones in here. I mean, Duncan raced very well in this series last year. Please Let Me Know. Another one that excels versus these horses. Hemsworth's another one that's been in this series the past couple years and has raced well. And once in a while, you can catch him at a price too. Line Steel, very speedy. This is another fantastic race.
Well, and Duncan, if you remember right, he earned a bit more stakes clout last year. He upset in the Dan Patch at Hoosier Park, if I remember right. That rate. It's always tough to tell between the Dan Patch and the Hoosier Park Pacing Derby. They kind of exist in the same place inside of my brain. But you know, Mike, you know, maybe not a lot of people know, but I'm an Oak Grove guy. I'm a guy who, when Oak Grove is on TV, I also appear on TV. Sometimes I turn on Oak Grove TV and I go, what am I doing there? And in the Kentucky Sire Stakes series, I actually got to see for once in my life race, and he really impressed me. He has a decent, like, he's a real muscly guy, and it really makes it's no surprise to me to see, for one, that he's here, and for two, to see that he's really developed from that 4-year-old season. He was able to do things even at Oak Grove that a lot of horses couldn't do, which, I mean, you'd expect of a stakes type horse, but for one, you also mentioned the Stratton barn, always one to watch for. This horse now in the hands of Corey Stratton. And I feel like off the qualifier, this guy draws a perfect post. I think he fits this stakes group nicely. I'd hope we get an okay price on him. He does have a bunch of wins, and he does have a decent amount of buzz to him. So there is a chance he could be like a lukewarm favorite, just given everything. But I'd take like a 7-2. If I could get it on for once in my life, because he seems well suited for the smaller track. I know he has a lot of lines where he goes right to the lead. He can really come from off the pace too. Joey Putnam at Oak Grove, actually, he drove him to a victory, and he came home like 4 wide and like 27 and change, which you'd think is easy at Oak Grove, but not a lot of horses really did. So I think he's probably my favorite horse of the night. He'd probably be a best bet for me.
You'll get a price. Division. You'll get a price in here because he doesn't have a name. He's not the Duncans, the Please Let Me Knows, even the Line Steel. I mean, Line Steel has won 56 races. Coach's Corner is another one that excelled last year. So all these horses are going to take money. You're going to do okay here. You'll be over 4-1, I believe, in this race.
I'd hope so, because if I don't get it, then Mike, I'm gonna be weeping into the 3rd division. I won't be able to even look at the program straight. My glossy eyes are gonna make every number smear, which I don't know if it's gonna make it any easier to look at, because this division, even when I was looking at it clear-eyed with all 4 of my eyes, I can't get past Wish You Well, who we all remember from the Adios last year, burst onto the scene as a potential big challenger to Captain Albano. We know he has a pretty wicked late kick. We know that he can handle the smaller tracks fairly nicely. And on top of that, I think we can excuse that effort last out. He seems like he could probably rebound. He's in against a group of mostly, some lower class condition horses. Act Fast, of course, he's got some class to him. Artie's Flash has been in the Invitational, but Wish You Well, he seems like a legitimate stakes horse.
He is, but he got really good right around that Adios time last year, right? And then since then, he's just been okay. Didn't race very well at Dover. There's some horses that don't like it there, and then has had time off since the comeback. Really hasn't shown a whole lot, and then busted last time. He's going to be an underlay in here, so I think he needs to prove it a little bit. Yeah, he might be the most talented, but you have to be able to put it all together here. He might need a race or two to do that. I'm not sure. I would probably be looking to fade him. The problem is I'm not sure with whom. I mean, some of your better ones, drawn outside here. Horses like Venturesome Arden, another one that I think is well over this racetrack and is racing at upper condition levels. Lost as a favorite last time, but kicked 27-2 there. That's a horse that does interest me, that I think you can get an okay price on. Certainly has some recency over some of the others. So I do think that one could be okay. Won 10 races last year too. It's just and this might be the right group. I wouldn't want him against some of the heavies, but there's no heavies in here.
I think the heaviest has just a massive question mark dangling over him all the way outside. Humble, Scott Blackler horse. On the page, he does seem like he's the best, but how fresh is he going to be with his most recent parimutuel race being at the end of December? Like, he does have 2 qualifiers, 153, the other in 52-3. He kicked home fairly nicely in the more recent one. Is Jason? But we don't know if Jason's going to drive him yet. I think he will, just given his connection with Blackler as well. But would he really want to blast? Because if, for instance, he's on the board like 5-6-1, that could potentially be value if you can get him launching off the gate.
Yeah, I mean, 8 posts, first start back off a couple qualifiers, long series. I mean, he might win it. He might be that good, but I don't know. I mean, do you really want to take a short
Right.
price on a horse coming back? Like, no thanks. He could beat me. He could beat me.
It's one of those races where we're getting handed a bunch of limes to make lemonade, and you have to kind of just you have to sift through and strain what you can. And on top, we haven't even mentioned Act Fast, who I think is also really tough to read because he does get a great draw, and we know Gingras can blast. So he also could be as simple as everyone else kind of takes back, and Gingras just goes around the merry-go-round to get a nice check inside of this race as well. Next division is race number 8. Features a name that many are familiar with, not only in the Borgata Series, but also he won a little big race a long time ago called the North America Cup. It's sponsored by a beverage, which I don't know that I can say. So we're just gonna say it's a sparkling beverage, a sparkling sugar beverage, the Sparkling Sugar Beverage North America Cup, won by Desperate Man, making his first start of the season here.
And he's owned this series the past couple of years. Certainly has raced very well, but last year couldn't participate in the final. Ended up with an injury, but Travis Alexander usually has him ready to go. And I do think that he's the class in this race. Now, one of my favorite horses in here, Ammo, and he was dominating those opens at Rosecroft at the end of last year, has started this year in the invites at Yonkers, and he's getting some dubs. So he got an inside post. Yannick has been sticking with him. I like Ammo. Do I think he can beat Desperate Man? I don't know, but he's interesting, especially with being drawn inside him. And then you have Combustion coming back. Also, certainly has shown plenty of talent in his lifetime. I wish he was drawn a little better. This is a nice race here, too. I mean, the 6, Mostel Ben has merit. This is a nice race, even with Desperate Man, who's going to be obviously a big favorite.
And if I remember, did he win off the bench last year too? If I remember,
I think he did. I mean, he won. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, and so he might be the most obvious one here. I don't really know that it's worth going price shopping because if he just gets to the lead, he does have the power to just kind of carry himself home against even a classy group like this. But we also should mention that he didn't win in the Borgata last year because he actually was part of one of the most memorable renditions of the race because he got parked by Xeron in Line Drive Hanover.
Wasn't that 2 years ago?
Was that 2 years ago? If that was 2 years ago, I need to quit my job at the Calendar Factory because I swore that was last year with Line Drive Hanover. But that aside, Mike is doing the fact checking on that. But to my memory, Desperate Man, he tends to do a lot of good work here at Yonkers when he races on the lead. I thought that the only possibility would be if he's short. I don't think with 3 qualifiers under his belt, he's really going to be short. I think Travis Alexander has him ready for this race. And surrounding him, honestly, are closers. You mentioned Combustion. That horse only races well if the pace collapses in front of him. It's a me, Mario, who's right next door to Desperate Man. He can probably benefit from capitalizing on a pace that slows at the end. I think the only other horse that kind of interests me, you only somewhat mentioned, is Mosdale Ben. Just because this guy shipped in from New Zealand, started at the Hours of 10, has just been win, 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 win. And we saw similar stuff from other down under horses that have come into the series. I remember Corey Stratton had one whose name now also escapes me because he started from a real low rank at Yonkers, and George Brennan was driving him, and he just kept climbing, and he was a pretty big threat inside of the Borgata Series as well. That is his name escapes me. Hanover. That's that horse's name. But Mike, am I right? Was that last year's?
You're right. It was last year.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can keep my job at the Calendar Factory because this does not pay everything up.
Yeah, that was last year.
And Hullabaloo was sitting right behind.
That Desperate Man got hurt before the final. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe, but maybe we don't have time to fact check that. The people at home can fact check that for
do that
themselves. But yeah, Masdale Ben's the only other horse I can really touch on inside of that division. Ammo, of course, makes sense. He's also one that you're contractually obligated to. It's crazy how you you hit one horse at like 80-1 in a Breeders' Crown, and that's actually like a lifelong contract where you have to mention him for the rest of his racing career.
Ammo for me. Again, he was only 50-1, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, he gave you enough ammo to last a long while.
Indeed.
Last division then of the Borgata is race number 9 on Monday. 8 horses going postward inside of this one. Another horse familiar to me from the old Oak Grove, Admiral Hill. This time around, he can't go through Kentucky because he's too old for the series. And so he also adds Lasix as a result. But here he is at 5 years old, making his foray into the Borgata for Angblom. How do you feel he stands?
Looks good. I mean, if he can repeat some of the lines from last year, you mentioned adding Lasix. I think that's a positive here. He won 12 for 18 last year. Certainly has plenty of talent. The qualifier looks solid. I do think that he plays very well here, and he gets, I think, the right bunch. Rock and Roll Runa certainly was fantastic last year in this series. He draws outside. He had a couple big upsets last year, so he always plays well. I think Birthday is one of my favorite horses too. I do think that one has talent. Maybe he's not quite this caliber, and he's certainly right now up against it. It seems. Given the first 2 starts, but he had some poor posts and some poor trips at Meadowlands. He's an interesting entrant into the series here, so he could probably make a little bit of noise. Yeah, it looks like Admiral Hill in this spot. Maybe Why Not Now is another one that's just okay here. Certainly plenty of talent there, but maybe needs to class up. Last year really didn't do as well, but he's raced well in the past.
I by this point, I'll probably just be like collecting my notes on all of the other horses because the first the first time of anything is really hard. Like we just had opening week at Oak Grove, and there's so much to take just from the trips, how the track was playing, how the drivers were driving, and that's a similar situation with this Borgata series. Admiral Hill, he's obvious. I think I kind of question whether Gingras is really going to be able to power him from post 4 because Birthday probably will want to go. I feel like Hungry Angel Boy will want to try and protect position. Joe is going to try and blast with Typhoon Banner to the inside, so it could be a little contentious. But at the same time, Admiral Hill he did some pretty good things at Oak Grove last year. He actually holds the all-time track record at Oak Grove.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I believe it was 48-4 that he won in the Kentucky
48.
Sire Stakes. Oh, it was 48.
Yeah.
And the Kentucky Sire Stakes program, pretty solid there, even though like sometimes there were short fields and stuff. He had a decently tough bunch to face, and it wasn't easy for him a lot of times. But this also isn't really like super classy of a field at the same time. Hungry Angel Boy, of course, I remember I had him to finish second to Confederate in the Meadowlands Pace, and to this day, no one has congratulated me on that. He was like 90-1.
That's great. I mean, yeah, that's what we're looking to remember. I mean, come on.
We're looking to remember my losing long shots, but I'm curious how he fits into this race. He's a 5-year-old. The races at Pocono aren't really stellar, but if he's able to get away close, I think he's going to be an okay price if you're looking for something to kind of slide in underneath. My imagination can't really go super beyond Admiral Hill, at least this early in the series, unless Rock and Roll Runa is like 7-1, which he won't be from this spot because everyone remembers that he was also very productive in the Borgata. And also, I think Athern's got a really tough trip ahead of him because, like I said, there's speed pretty much all the way inside. So I think he has to take back unless for some reason his horse is feeling stellar.
I do think Admiral Hill could be a good pick 5 single here, especially to finish up this $1 pick 5. Starts at $2 pick 4 at Yonkers. 12 races on Monday. Probably the best card that's been for since the year has started. So don't sleep on Yonkers Monday. This is the time to get involved here with the Grand Circuit coming back.
And of course, we won't touch on it in this episode, but on Friday also the Blue Chip Matchmaker, the companion series for the free-for-all pacing mares, goes postward. I think there's 4 divisions of that on Friday's card, so more stakes action for you to get in on over at Yonkers Raceway. As you mentioned too, one of the few tracks to have such high minimums. As we're at a point as gamblers where a lot of times we're getting annoyed with 20-cent pick fives, 10-cent superfectas. We want a bit more risk, and on top of that, a bit more reward. And so Yonkers following suit there with the dollar pick five. Northfield, I believe, is the only other track that has a dollar pick five, and then the $2 pick fours as well. You can build some pretty big pools. You can get some nice carryovers going as well, and then it just takes one series of events to build a really massive pool for you to get a chance to hop in on. So you really always want to be just keeping an eye on Yonkers, because you never know when a carryover or something is going to spur, especially as the stakes pick up.
Or Edison's going to be calling, so you got to pay attention to that too.
You got to call, because maybe Edison will do one of his funny accents that he doesn't do on the podcast, but he's been waiting to debut for the right moment. That does it for us, though. I mentioned Mike for me in the Borgata Series on Monday. I think for once in my life is my best play. I think he just has a lot of room to improve into this race and show himself to be a major factor as the series goes forward. But for you, who would you say is your best play for Monday at Yonkers?
If you're asking my heart, of course, Charlie May in that first leg. I do think that he would be the horse that I would definitely be on in this. And Ammo's another one that's close to me. But I do think Admiral Hill is the best bet of the entire night, and probably the single of that pick five. Just gets the right bunch, gets Lasix, is in the right hands. He's supposed to win that race, so I would probably lean heavily on him.
And that does it for us looking at Borgata. We'll look at more Borgata as the weeks go forward. 5 preliminaries and a final. The final surrounding, if I remember right, Kentucky Derby weekend.
Yes,
at Yonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 5 straight weeks for the series, and then the 9th of May is your final. So it's after the Derby this year, and get ready, because it's that's going to be, if all these horses show up and continue through this series, those Borgata finals can be crazy. So get tied on. We're ready.
Well, and pools tend to be really great too. The Kentucky Derby fever hits everybody. Everybody gets some nice bucks in their pocket from winning at Churchill Downs, and then they go forward and they try to play other tracks in that next week as well. So there's also going to be great pools to bet in there also. Anything else that we need to touch on, Mike? Any contest jockey exciting stuff upcoming?
So Contest Jockey rolls on at the Raceway on Tuesday nights and at Fraser on Thursday nights. So check out contestjockey.com and get in. Hopefully, if you win one of those Raceway contests, you can enter into that Camelot Classic big contest for Camelot Classic night. I'm in there already because I've won one of the Western Fair contest jockeys. So get in and try to beat me.
Maybe easier said than done. Maybe harder said than done. It depends. When you catch Mike on a good day, he is tough to beat. I've caught him on many days where I can beat him, though. But at the end of the day, he can probably beat my ass. Me, though, I will be my only plug, Oak Grove. We're racing Mondays and Tuesdays. First race post time now 1:45 p.m. Central. And racing's
no
going to
hot dog foods. No, what are we doing this year?
Well, this year we are, we're as dedicated to the craft as ever. We've always been dedicated to just trying to help the horse players figure out what the hell an Oak Grove is and who the hell is at Oak Grove. So we're hoping that we can catch a lot of nice prices. We did really well last season. We at least beat the takeout just on flat top picks alone. But of course, I publish all my stats for how I perform that people can look at, and we have free pass performances as well. So really, there's no excuse not to get in at Oak Grove. And I'm just hoping that it can be a place that's not only just a playground for horse players, but also for like the inexperienced people. If you don't really know how to look at harness racing, I work really hard to try and help people figure out how to break down races, how to look at who is a contender, even how to look at lines that seem lackluster and how that could actually be a sign of something really good, just all depending on the situation. I try to make it a teaching platform as much as we like to have fun. I like to have fun at the very least. I'll also be in South Carolina this Saturday calling the Carolina Cup. It's like the 90th edition of that race, and there will be about 75,000 people there. So
wow.
what that means is
that's like Cheltenham.
when I run to my car, there will be a mob of 75,000 people waiting to tear me down. But that's for me to deal with. You have a lot more to deal with. You have a lot of races to bet, a lot of races to look at, and hopefully a lot of races to cash in. That does it for us on this week's edition of the Harness Players Podcast. We'll be back next week with more Fraser, more Borgata, and just more harness racing.
Who knows? There might be other things too.
Wait, why would there be?
I don't know. Century starts this week, so who knows? Maybe we'll get them in the mix. There's lots of things going on.
And if there's one thing that I know, and it is kind of surprising, in 2025, there's still a lot of harness racing.
There is.